Hello, welcome to another episode of Heaven's Kitchen. I'm Brother Michael James, the Director of Community Outreach and the Lima Center.
And I'm Kathleen Folan, Director of Family and Youth Ministries, and we are your masked and glassed Dominican chefs. The cool factor is high here.
Well, we're happy to have you here with us today. We're going to be making a very Lenten recipe, and that's pretzels. And we'll talk a little bit about why pretzels are a Lenten symbol and a Lenten food as we're going along. But first, let's tell you what you need. 1.5 cups of warm water, a tablespoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, or 2¼ teaspoons of active yeast. So whichever one you have in the house, you can use either ones. Just make sure you use those amounts. A teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, 4¼ cups of flour, and then you're going to need 2/3 cup baking soda, which is going to go in a pot of hot water, which is on the stove. You'll also need some salt for sprinkling at the end, and then your egg wash, and then a bowl that's been greased lightly with vegetable oil, and that's what we're going to let the dough rise in. So, to start off, we're going to put our 1.5 cups of warm water and our tablespoon of sugar and our teaspoon of salt and our 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. Kathy, if you can gently stir that just a little bit so it incorporates together.
Is that good?
That's good. So now you're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes so the yeast activates, and you'll begin to see the yeast spread out a little bit inside the bowl. So our yeast has been with the hot water and sugar salt for about 5 minutes now. So if you take a look, you can see it's bubbling a little bit.
Looks like a foamy sea bath.
Yes, so it has a little bit of foam, so that's how you know it's been working. So to that, you're going to add your 1/4 cup of melted unsalted butter. And make sure you use unsalted because you already put salt in here. And if you put too much, then you're just going to have a rather salty taste, which you might like with pretzels, but we're also going to be adding our salt at the end. So
It'd be too much salt.
too much salt. Yeah, make sure to balance it out. Okay? And then into that is our 4¼ cups of flour. Perfect. So as you can see, I'm actually using a mixer for this, a mixing bowl, and I'm going to put it on the hand mixer so that I don't have to do all that work. You can do this by hand, but it's a lot of kneading. So
Wait, I thought it was Lent for the regular. Are you supposed to work harder?
it is Lent, and we're going to have to knead this a little bit, but the mixer helps do a lot of the work for us. So I'm going to take that over, get that started, and you're going to use your hook attachment so that it works like dough as opposed to cookies or something like that. All right, so it's been about 5 minutes with the hook attachment on our mixer. And so as you can see, we have a nice bit of dough here. We're going to put it out onto the cutting board and just knead it a little bit to make sure that all of our flour has actually been incorporated. So I'll take this over to the sink.
Okay.
Kathy, do you want to knead a little bit?
Yeah. I actually watched this in the mixing, and it was so cool for 5 minutes. It was like therapy. Is that good, or do you need a little more?
Just kind of open it up a little bit. Make sure you don't have any pockets of flour that haven't been fully incorporated.
Okay.
And that looks pretty good. So again, just knead it a little bit until you get a nice ball.
Yeah.
And then we're going to put it into, again, we have a pre-greased bowl here. So just a little bit of vegetable oil spread around with a paper towel. And the dough will go in there and rise for about an hour. So, and you want to go ahead and put saran wrap over it. sure to pull it tight over the bowl. You don't want any air getting in there, any kind of draft. And you want to set it someplace a little bit warm, not hot, because you don't want to bake the dough. So I usually put it on the level above the stove and above the oven here so that it warms a little bit.
Yes.
And so through the magic of YouTube, we already have some dough that we prepared earlier.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so it's already risen for a little over an hour. And so now we can get to the part of actually making the pretzels.
Now, what makes pretzels a Lenten food?
That's a really good question. So it actually has to do with the origin of pretzels, and there's different stories about this. Let's go ahead and take this out of the bowl first, and then I'll kind of tell you some of those stories as we're working. So you're going to divide this dough into 12 pieces, and so I usually use a pastry cutter like this. You can use a big knife as well. Divide it into 4 pieces first.
Okay, kids. 12 divided by 4 equals 3.
So divide into 4 pieces first, and then each of those pieces you're going to do into about 3 equal parts. Right? So why don't you keep cutting, and I'll kind of tell that story. So like I said, pretzels have different stories of their origin. One is that they were developed by an Italian monk in the 600s as a reward for children who learned their prayers. So the name Prezziola, which is what they were called, actually meant little rewards. Another story is that they originated in Germany, and so there the name Bretzel, B-R-E-Z-E-L, which comes from the Latin word Bruxellus, which means little arms. And so when you make that shape of a pretzel, exactly, you have your arms crossed over your chest in prayer, which was one of the postures and gestures for prayer back in the Middle Ages. So 2 ways in which pretzels are a Lenten symbol, a Lenten food. Also, when they were first made, they didn't have all the ingredients we used. It was mostly just flour, water, and salt. So a little penitential.
Yeah.
We're making them a little more tasty. All right, so now we've got our 12 pieces. Great job, Kathy. So with each of these, you're just going to roll it out into a rope. So if you remember when we did our crown of thorns recipe a few weeks back, we had to make all those ropes to braid together. Well, these aren't really going to be braided together, but you still need to make some ropes. So, and this is really good dough. Look at how easy it is to work with. So,
this is way easier than the crown of thorns.
yeah. So, and again, kids can do this. You can do it this way. You can do it on the counter and the table. You just need to make it a little long. You don't want it to be too thick because otherwise it'll bake kind of unevenly. So just make sure you kind of get an even rope here. And your dough should stick together pretty well if you incorporated all the ingredients properly. Again, this is why we use the stand mixer, because it takes out a lot of that worry of not knowing if it's going to be right. Okay, that's a good length there.
Okay.
So,
Like this?
Yep, bring one end, and then the other one to cross over. And then, yeah, push those end pieces into your dough a little bit.
Okay, here's my pretzel.
Right, great. Okay, so you've got one, I've got one. All right. Okay, so we're at the stove now. As you can see on our pan, we've gotten all of our dough rolled out into braids, or into ropes, and then we have folded them over in the shape of the pretzel. So now what's going to happen is we're going to boil each one for about 30 seconds in the water and baking soda mixture. So I'm going to take one, and I use a slotted spoon, and just very gently put it into the water. And each one you're going to do for about 30 seconds. And you'll notice it'll start to rise a little bit as you keep your count there. And then once it's done in here for the 30 seconds, I'm going to drain it a little bit with the slotted spoon, stick it back on the baking sheet, and then Kathy is going to brush it with an egg wash so it gets that nice golden brown color, and then sprinkle it with salt. And you can use, oh, we lost the shape a little bit. That's okay. You can use more coarse kosher salt, so you have the bigger flakes, or you can use simple table salt from your table, whichever works for you. Okay, so that one is ready.
I would use the big salt personally. And you know, salt, we talked about it in the crown of thorns, is a preservative. And that's why there was so much salt in the crown of thorns, right? So that it wouldn't get moldy by Easter. And it also, Jesus talks about salt in the Bible quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because salt, you know, if you have a great dish, let me see. My family's favorite thing I make is Mexican casserole. If you don't have salt in it, you don't taste the flavors as much, but when you add salt, it just brings out all the flavors. So that's what we as Christians need to bring out, all the holy flavors in the world, in our lives, right?
Yeah. Okay. Here's our next one. Again, just drain it a little bit. Again, Kathy's going to add the egg wash. Again, it's just an egg, a little bit of water. Brush it on with your brush, and then add your salt. And again, depending on your baking sheets, if you want to put down some parchment paper or a silicone mat so it doesn't stick and make a big mess, that's okay. Oh.
Okay, now that we're done, do we bake them?
Yes, it's time to bake them. So the oven has been preheating to 450 degrees, and you're going to stick them in for 12 to 14 minutes in the center rack. So let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, it's been about 12 minutes, so we're ready to take our pretzels out of the oven. So Kathy, you want to take those out for us?
Ooh, they look beautiful. Delicious.
Wow.
Look at those, golden brown.
Wonderful. So you can see they have their nice pretzel shape. Oh, do you want to put the ones that we have already made? So while we were waiting, we made our other ones, and so they're ready to go in. But these are our done product. So you can see they have their nice pretzel shape. You're going to let them sit for about 5 minutes just to cool here on the rack a little bit, and then probably put them onto a cooling rack so they can cool a little bit more. Don't eat them right now. I know they're really tempting and they smell really good.
What do they smell like?
What?
Heaven's Kitchen.
So, thanks for joining us for Heaven's Kitchen.
Yep, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.